Hello and welcome to Sami Parvez Show. Today I'm joined by veteran Canadian journalist David Krayden, who is columnist for the Post Millennial. We will be discussing the NCCOP report and the government response, and also the diversity, equity, and inclusion job quota system in Canada and Online Arms Act bill.
Thank you so much, David, to joining me this morning. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the right now it is the hot topic on the news and social media. It is regarding foreign interference in Canada. There were interference in last two elections in 2019 and 2021. So how do you see it? My concern is it just happening in Liberal government, or it happened in back in Harper government and then the past Liberal government, it means between 1993 until 2006?
Well, we have no idea how long this foreign interference goes back. We do know it does go back to at least the second minority government and the first minority government of Justin Trudeau. It's conceivable that foreign interference has been going on for years and it spans multiple parties. However, I think right now the most important thing is to find out how the Liberal Party benefited in the last two elections, because that's what the Canadian Security Intelligence Service is indicating, that there was a definitely somebody was benefiting. And it seems like they were Toronto area MPs. And I think this needs to be not just investigated, but we need to know which MPs definitely received help from China. But more importantly, right now, this whole foreign interference question has become serious to the nth degree, because now we have a report coming out from parliamentarians, a nonpartisan group, or more, shall we say, a multi-partisan group of parliamentarians who say that there were spies in the House of Commons.
Yep.
And I use the word spy, and I hear the media saying things like wittingly were taken in, or were, what's another word they're using, collaborated. This is espionage.
Yeah.
If you work for a foreign power and you get favors for doing so, which this report said in the unredacted form,
Yep.
I think this has to be revealed. We need the names. We need to know the names of these MPs. I don't care if they're Liberal, Conservative, or NDP. It appears now that they're mostly or all Liberals.
Yep.
But we need to know the names, and we need to know how this behavior was tolerated, and how this behavior cannot be tolerated in the future, because this is espionage. And any other country, I think, in the first world anyway, in terms of your essential democracies in the world, say any G7 nation, then any G7 nation would look at this and say, this is outrageous. We can't allow this to continue. And I think the public needs to know. What is the government in Canada doing right now? They're saying the public doesn't need to know. If I say anything, the RCMP is going to arrest me for saying anything about this if I reveal any names. And we're going to push this up to the Hogue Commission to look at, the Hogue inquiry, where it can be buried. And question period stopped on Wednesday this week. I cover question period every day. And there wasn't a single question about it all week. It's like the issue has died. And Justin Trudeau refuses to reveal anything. I don't know if he even read the report. He says he doesn't like to read reports. But when he was questioned about this at the G7 summit, he meandered all over the place, tap danced for a while about how his government takes this very seriously, and his is the first government to actually do anything about foreign interference, which is nonsense. And then he says nothing about whether or not any of these MPs are Liberals, or if he can name them. No, he won't name them. And he's shocked to hear that Jagmeet Singh has read the report and says he's concerned about it. He says, I didn't know Jagmeet said that. Once again, it's the prime minister who's detached from reality. And I do think we need to know. I think foreign interference is extremely important. And how far it goes back, yeah, I think we should know that too. I think it's a given that China has been trying to influence Canada for a long time. Did they succeed under Harper? I don't know. I have no idea. I think there was a greater ethical margin under Harper, but perhaps I'm being optimistic when I say that, or perhaps I'm being too favorable. I don't think there's a high ethical threshold right now with the Trudeau government. I mean, it's scandal after scandal after scandal. He has managed to walk through them all. But at least it demonstrates, if he's not legally culpable, he is in ethical trouble constantly in terms of his decision making. And I think he makes very bad decisions that are contrary to good government, good governance, and contrary to the interests of Canadians, but in the interest of Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. So it's a long answer, but
yeah, I understand. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So we saw like last report from Justice Mary Og with respect to foreign interference in last two election, but we did not come to a conclusion. Like it clearly mentioned that a liberal candidate was supported by Chinese Communist like group, or Chinese government supported on Hendong. Yeah. So
yes, there is clear indication.
So it means during nomination process they supported him. He should win the nomination process, but Justin Trudeau knew at that time during the nomination process, but he did not take any action because it benefited his party for that nomination. We came to a conclusion. Then Trudeau just cautioned and did not take any action. Don't you think that MP should not be in the House of Commons because he was?
Well, I don't think he should be in the House of Commons, but that's my opinion. That's not the law.
Yep.
But what bothers me, Sami, about this whole procedure is that all parties sort of shrug this off as being, well, that's what nominations are like.
Yeah.
They're that unethical. And I've run for political office myself. I've gone through nominations, and it doesn't matter what party. They're very unethical. People will do things. Party leaders get involved. They write letters to the voters who are voting in the nomination to tell them not to support a certain candidate. I had that happen to me.
Wow.
Or to support a certain candidate because he's their man or she's their woman. That's who the voters should be supporting.
Yeah.
And nomination meetings are so unethical and so corrupt. And the idea of bussing in a bunch of kids to vote for somebody simply because they're told to, or they're expecting or anticipating some kind of favor in response to it, or maybe it's just a free meal or a free beer. That is disgraceful. That's a disgraceful way to run a democratic procedure called a nomination. But it goes on in all the parties. I think the Liberals are probably best at it, or worst at it, if you will. And I think there's been some reforms in the Conservative Party to make, but they do it. They still take out the people they don't want in nominations.
Yes.
And they still encourage people not to vote for people. So this kind of ethical collapse is evident in all the political parties. But this should not be continued. I think the difference with what happened in Toronto is that we're used to candidates bussing in their supporters en masse for votes. But when it involves a foreign interference factor, when it's China involved, or China could be getting a benefit from this, then it becomes a whole different standard. And I think that has to be examined. And if we ever get anything out of this Hogue Commission, this inquiry, which I think largely has been useful thus far, but we'll see what happens when they deliver a report. I think there should be some very solid recommendations about how people are nominated in the future, and that we cannot involve a foreign power, or if a foreign power gets involved, then the nomination is called off, or the nomination has to be redone, or we have to start over. And I think that's certainly something that could come out of the Hague Commission. I'm not optimistic, though, that we're going to get anything from this inquiry other than platitudes. And I think the inquiry will tell Justin Trudeau exactly what he wants to know, or what he wants to hear. Unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, because I think this is a half decent justice. I think she's done Justice Hogue has done a pretty good job up till now. But the political pressure is immense on these commissions to give the government the results they want. So I hope she doesn't cave to that. I hope she has moral and ethical strength. But we'll see.
Okay, thank you. So if such kind of thing happened in any other democratic world, like it means with Australia, New Zealand, or UK, they also have a like parliamentarian system. Same like Canada. But if such thing happened there, do you think the MP would not longer, or Prime Minister may resign?
I don't think you get a resignation, but I think you probably have bigger pushback in the House of Commons or the legislature, as the case may be. So I think you get, but I don't think it would lead to resignation. And that's, unfortunately, it's too accepted in party politics right now, and that goes across national lines.
Okay. So, but right now it means China is more influencing Canada under Trudeau. But have you ever seen such thing back in Harper government?
Have I ever seen such
Yeah,
things?
such thing like it is influencing or getting more gain. Like it means we have seen, like it means Chinese Canadian, or those who are more it means collaborating with China, or like Senator Wu. I mean,
Yes,
like
that's a good example.
Yeah,
That's a good example. That senator certainly does seem to be cooperating with China big time. I think in most cases, though, what China's doing is targeting, in not in a favorable way, but in an unfavorable way, the diaspora of the Chinese people who have left China and come to Canada to escape persecution and the political authoritarianism. China goes after these people. We know we had Chinese police stations operating in China, and there still might be one working out of Montreal. The government's very unclear whether it's actually been shut down. These exist in Australia as well. And of course, China and Australia have had a very tortured relationship over the year because there's the close proximity between the two countries. But we didn't really expect that sort of thing to happen in Canada, where we'd have Chinese police stations going after, targeting Chinese Canadians in Canada. So I think that's largely what's been happening here. And I think that's another reason to shut down the Chinese interference, because it's targeting people who left China because they were persecuted. They came to Canada for freedom, and they're not really getting it. And I think they deserve that. So I think that's probably one of the recommendations we'll get from this inquiry, is that there should be greater safeguards put in place, because I mean, the Chinese are actually targeting a sitting member of the House of Commons and his family. And that was allowed to continue. But the real question for me, in terms of what is China up to here, is that how were two Chinese scientists allowed to continue to work in a top secret biolab in Winnipeg? 2 years they were allowed to continue their work. And you're telling me nobody knew that they were spying for the Chinese secret police? They were spying, and nobody wants to use that word again. It's like they were sending material and documents back to China. Well, that's called spying when you do that. And they did that for 2 years before they were just fired. Nobody tried to prosecute them. Nobody even mentioned it. It was the Trudeau government buried the story. because it was so-called national security.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to talk about it. So we just fired these two scientists and sent them back to China. And there's so many questions here that are still unanswered in terms of why did it take 2 years to fire these people? What did CSIS know? What did CSIS report to the government and the government ignored? And once again, we learned from the Hogue inquiry, CSIS tells the government a lot. They sit down with Justin Trudeau and personally brief him. But apparently he doesn't listen and he doesn't read the reports. Did they tell him about this spying operation? And my question is, did China expect to get something back for spying? And did the government of Canada expect a payback for allowing this spying to go on? That's the question. It hasn't even been asked of the government. It hasn't even been asked of Justin Trudeau. Did you get a payback for allowing these Chinese scientists to continue to work at a top secret lab, knowing that they had sent material back to China, material and documents? First question, when did you know that this was going on? When did you do something about it? And did you get anything in return if you allowed it to continue after you knew that this was going on? That's the question I would ask of the Prime Minister if I had the option. Obviously, he would say not at all. But I think we need to look at the evidence. So we need to look at actually the timeline of what happened here. Because if there's a quid pro quo, that to me is hugely damaging. If Justin Trudeau personally or politically benefited from this arrangement. And I'm not hearing that question asked very, very much, if at all. And I think it should be. Yeah.
So at that time when it was raised, I believe it was first time during when Erno Toll was the leader of the opposition. He was keep pushing this one, and along with his colleagues. So he called out like anti-Asian racism, or you are a racist, like questioning on those two Chinese scientists, or like it means whenever you questioned him on China, he continuously just divert you and call you a racist, like back in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, well, it perplexes me at times why the Conservative Party keeps talking about Beijing, 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 and not China, as if that's suddenly racist to say China is spying on us.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why they would even make that connection. But I've interviewed Conservative MPs who refuse to say anything but Beijing, as if that's somehow racially neutral to say Beijing. This has nothing to do with race. This is not a racial question. It's not China's not spying because of any racial identity. China's spying because it's a superpower and wants to be more of a superpower, and it wants to influence nations, and it wants to exert power, and that's got nothing to do with race. And so I don't know why anybody would confuse racism with this. And but this is a country obsessed with race, and Justin Trudeau is a man obsessed with race. Everything is race related. Identity politics is how he runs the country. This is how he runs his party. So he's the one obsessed with race. The people I know aren't obsessed with race. And I think that's, if you want to say this is about China spying on Canada, then I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. So, but do you think we will come to a conclusion to know the names of those MPs are colluding with foreign powers? And will there be a good investigation by Justice Hogue?
I don't think so. And I'm just being totally honest in that response. I hope so, and I will fight for that in whatever capacity I have as a journalist, even as a Canadian citizen who's concerned. But I don't believe it's going to happen, because I've already seen the indication that this is going to be buried. It's going to be buried under the mask of national security, or under the cloak of national security, and under the cloak of judicial reasoning saying it's, well, we can't because it would put us in a legal position of being possibly arrested. The election really doesn't want to be well known. So I don't think that I have seen the indication that they're pushing this up. And it really, I found it confusing that the suggestion that these names and this whole question of who was spying be transferred to the Hogue inquiry. Very perplexing. I was very confused about that because it was the Bloc Québécois who came up with that suggestion. Mm-hmm. And the Bloc Québécois really has no skin in this game. Mm-hmm. The Bloc is not fighting for Canada. The Bloc is fighting only for Quebec. Mm-hmm. And really, the Bloc is already working for a foreign power. It's called a Republic of Quebec that doesn't exist. Yeah. But that's who they're working for. They're not working for Canada. So why is the Bloc giving advice about how to handle this national security crisis? Mm-hmm. Why is the Bloc suggesting that this be handled by the Hogue inquiry when the Bloc has no real intention of fighting for Canada's future? All they're interested in is in their own self-preservation and the future of Quebec. Mm-hmm. So this is not a question for the Bloc to ponder. This is not a question for the Bloc to submit solutions to. And I was very surprised that not only the Liberals but the Conservatives, in fact, all parties agreed that this was a wonderful solution to just push this up or into another pipeline where we can forget about it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that seems to be the attitude in Parliament Hill right now. Mm-hmm. Let's just forget about it. Mm-hmm. Let's not talk about it because summer's here. Mm-hmm. The House is recessing today, of course. This question period ceased on Wednesday. All the MPs are going home for the summer. Mm-hmm. And they might get the question in their ridings and constituencies. Yeah. But it's a lot easier just to say, well, that's with the Hogue inquiry, and we'll know more about that in the fall. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot harder to say that when you're standing up in the House of Commons every day, question period, getting questions about it. Yeah. And unfortunately, in this country, we are far too tied. Our political reporting is far too tied to question period, because when question period is not on, it's like the news stops and reporters have to find other means of asking questions. Mm-hmm. And that's unfortunate. But I don't think we're going to get the name. No, because I think it's in the interest of all the parties. And I think that's very sad. And I think it's very suspicious. But there seems to be an all-party agreement just to push this up the Hogue inquiry pipeline and leave it there. So I don't think we're going to get the names. No. And would that happen in the U.S.? I don't think so. I think the U.S. media, as bad as it is, would at least pressure the government to say, hey, you can't get away with this. Yeah. We need to know those names. We've got corrupt congressmen or congresswomen. Yeah. But in Canada, I'm not seeing the pressure from the mainstream media at all, saying we demand to know the name. They've been writing about and saying this is horrible, this is disgraceful, and the government really should give us the names, but that's as far as it goes.
Okay. But in the report also there were name of conservative leadership race. It is being said that it means foreign powers influenced to support the Pierre Poilievre to win the race.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that. Mm-hmm. I have no idea why China would want Poilievre to win that race. Mm-hmm. He's completely at odds with China's interests. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's one of the reasons Pierre Poilievre hasn't read the report. I don't know. Yeah, I am critical of that. I mean, I will commend Pierre Poilievre when I think he's doing something right, but I don't understand why he has not gotten his security clearance and read the report. I mean, that is just plain silly to me, because if he wants to be prime minister, and he probably will be prime minister in less than 18 months, he will need to get his security clearance to read classified documents. I had a top secret security clearance in the military. It takes for ordinary people, it takes a while to get one. To read classified documents at the top secret level. Yeah. But Pierre Poilievre will need one to be prime minister. And he might as well get it now. And he should be reading this report. I don't understand why he thinks he doesn't need to read it. and he's going to get all the answers from Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau has clammed up as much as possible. He is not going to be revealing any more about this report.
Yep.
Neither will Jagmeet Singh, and I'm not sure Elizabeth May even read the report, or she read a different one, or it was during that certain time of day for her. I don't know, but she clearly did not read the same report as Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But Pierre Poilievre cannot rely on the good graces of Justin Trudeau to find out what's in this report. He's got to find out himself. And I don't know why he's not.
But isn't it like if you read the report, then you cannot question the government on those particular things, like what Tom McMillan also said, the former NDP leader. He said, I would suggest, like, yeah, he's doing right. Pierre Poilievre is not reading the report because he will lose his is those right? It means then he cannot question the government about that report when you read it, because you sign some like, it means you will take a oath. You are not going to disclose anything, and maybe you are not going to question,
like a non-disclosure clause. Yeah. I know he's saying that's the reason, but I think in terms of a national security question, he needs to read it, and it's not that he can't ever ask a question about it again. So we need some more clarity on that, but I don't think he's asking many questions about it now anyway, is he? There wasn't a single question from the Conservatives all week. In fact, Jagmeet Singh asked a question about the report this week in question period. Nothing from the Conservatives. So if he's using that as an excuse not to read the report, he's not really exploiting it very well.
So I think, So I think there could be like some benefits. It means they got some beneficial from foreign colluding with like India and China. It means there are some Indian diaspora MPs in Conservative Party as well. Like it seems like they are getting more attention from Pierre Poilievre. He's talking with local media, like it means those are just independent, like some Indian diaspora, like media. And yeah, one day, like one of his MP spoke in Punjabi rather than using bilingual or English or French. So it seems like is being more soft in India, but we have seen after when Trudeau visited India trip, as it was the most embarrassing trip of an Canadian Prime Minister to India.
Twice.
Yeah, but then on the following week or month, then Andrew Scheer visited there. And it seems like they are having a very good relationship with India. Don't you think so?
Trudeau has a problem with India, and maybe it's because on his first trip to India, he looked like an absolute idiot, wearing traditional Indian garb, when that's something he would call cultural appropriation, just the hypocrisy of it, and preening before the camera every day and trying some local dances and looking ridiculous. And then, but the other, the G20. When there were accusations that his plane was full of cocaine. An Indian diplomat made that. And of course, Prime Minister Modi made every possible indication that he doesn't like Justin Trudeau. And if you watch the Indian news, which I do quite frequently, I really enjoy Indian news because I find it very objective about a lot of world questions. They hate Trudeau. They just hate Trudeau on the Indian news. They think he's a clown. They think he's constantly making things up about India. They think that he's obsessed with his identity politics and his own agenda. So I enjoy watching the Indian news, largely because they really give it to Trudeau, and I think it's good. But Trudeau has a problem with India, and I think if this report said India was the chief concern for for Canada in terms of election interference,
Yeah.
Trudeau would be all over the place trumpeting. But it mentions, apparently it mentions India, but it's not the factor China is. So I certainly think India is a country Canada should be forging close links with. We're both Commonwealth countries. We have a similar parliament. We have the same parliamentary system, and India is a growing middle class market.
Yeah,
like Canada's going down economically. India is going up, and I think this is a nation we should be forging closer ties with, not alienating and insulting the way Justin Trudeau constantly does. And I just think this is bad for Canada and Canada-Indian relations.
Yeah, but I believe it is because Trudeau is more supporters from Sikh community. It believe like Sikhs more support the Khalistan movement. You know, like Trudeau had last time like 4 MPs or how many, as there was like Modi did not have much Sikh MPs or minister in his cabinet than Trudeau is. I mean, it was a joke at that time when Trudeau appointed lots of like diaspora communities minister. But we have seen, like, you remember back in like 2017 or 18, Trudeau visited India. He had like many ministers, especially Sikh minister, including Arjit Sajan. Arjit Sajan was the minister of defense. What the hell is he doing in this trip? It was with respect to economic. It was not about the national security or something else. It means they just visited there, and there was a condition they have to meet with Punjab chief minister. You know, like it means there should be a reconciliation between these Trudeau's minister with Modi's like Sikh ministers, Sikh community ministers. So it seems like they were just it means reconciling their relationship with them. Their trip was like that. Didn't you notice it like that, or what's your thought?
Well, I think Trudeau should not wade into internal Indian politics. I mean, they have their we have our problems with Quebec over the years, and India has its challenges with the Punjab region, and I don't think Trudeau should get involved or take sides with that at all. And I think he should leave that to India to sort out. And I think it just muddies the water for Canada when he does that. And I think Trudeau needs to focus on the reality of what India is today, and not to foment crisis or create uncertainty in that country. I think that's what he does everywhere he goes, though. Everywhere he goes, he sows uncertainty, not just about Canada, but in other countries. So he is a very, very bad what's the word I'm looking for in terms of somebody he's supposed to represent Canada, and he's a poor representative of Canada at the best of times.
Yeah, I think he hates Canada, and many times he called Canada as a racist place. Not directly, but indirectly, you know, like with regards to saying 215 mass graves were found in BC, but nothing was found there. And we lived in our darkest time in the history, like flags, maple leaf plague was up mass for almost a year. We did not celebrate Canada Day.
Well, when Trudeau was exposed for doing his blackface performances, I recall he blamed Montreal, saying, "I grew up in a racist city."
Yeah.
And it's their fault that I did this racist behavior, that I exhibited racist behavior for most of my adult life. And I just thought that is incredible. And to me, that exhibited the maximum degree of hypocrisy that any human being is capable of. And that is what Justin Trudeau is about. He's about unalloyed narcissism and hypocrisy. Those are the two qualities that best define Justin Trudeau. And this is why he has no trouble at all blaming Montreal for his racism. He has no problem calling the Freedom Convoy protesters racist and misogynists. And yet he's the one that female MPs say he's a tyrant to work for because he belittles them. And he's the guy that did blackface for God knows how many years. And he points his finger at everybody else. He says Canada is a terribly racist country. No, you're a terribly racist individual because all you ever do is talk about race. And I'm sick of hearing Trudeau talk about race and climate change. That's all he wants to talk about.
Yeah. So let's talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So it seems like since Trudeau took office, he brought up gender, like 50-50 gender balance cabinet. So, but have you ever noticed something before, or it was just Trudeau introduced this DEI system to every job should be on quota system, balance for white and non-white and other gender, or in public like public office or private sector government job should be on DEI quota, though if you are white you have more qualification or qualified, you should not get it, let it somebody else get it, or like it has been going on. Did it start in 2015 or it has been happening before?
Well, Trudeau codified it, if you will. He has made it a fact in the cabinet, and it's ludicrous. Now, everything about Trudeau's gender policies is ludicrous, and it's very destructive. And the whole DEI application is absolutely horrendous in Canadian society. It is part of his identity politics. He judges people on the basis of ethnicity, race, and gender, and not on qualifications. And this, unfortunately, I grew up at a time when we still talked about people being colorblind, where race was not a factor. It should not be a factor because, as Martin Luther King said, he wanted to be judged on the basis of his qualifications, not on the color of his skin. And that is the philosophy I grew up with. And that's not the philosophy pushed by Justin Trudeau and the woke ideologues who run Canada. Race is the factor. We judge people on the basis of their race, not on their qualifications. And we have to have quotas in our society at all levels to demonstrate this artificial application. And it is corrosive, absolutely corrosive to Canadian society because it works contrary to everything that civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and others work so hard to achieve. Is to not judge on the basis of race, but on qualifications. And that's not what Justin Trudeau is doing. And I think it's probably the most destructive thing he's done, with the exception of what I thought we were going to be talking about today, with the Online Harms Act. I think his attack on freedom of speech is definitely, that will be Trudeau's legacy. It won't be legalizing pot, which is the only other thing he's done of consequence since being prime minister, or even invoking the Emergencies Act, which is probably another hugely destructive act. His legacy will be destroying freedom of speech in Canada. And hopefully when he's gone, we can resurrect it, we can recover from it. But he has worked assiduously to destroy my freedom of speech and your freedom of speech in this country. And the Online Harms Act is the jewel in the crown of that act. He wants that to be the most odious attack on free speech anywhere in the world. And I believe it is. I think it is as bad as anything we've seen in communist regimes or fascist countries.
But as you are talking about Online Arms Act, so even though his minister, his name is Arif Virazi, I don't know.
Yes.
So he says that if you think about something, it means you are under arrest. It means you will be a threat for other citizens. So do you think it makes sense? So are they, if it would get passed, so it means if I would say something on social media, will I be under arrest?
Well, yes, you could be under arrest, and that's what I'm trying to impress upon people and other journalists is that yes, you could be in life imprisonment for saying something the government doesn't like, saying something the government deems to be hateful. Hate speech is a ludicrous term to begin with because one person's hate is another person's criticism. And not only that, it's certain identifiable groups are only classified as being allowed to suggest that they're victims of hate speech. So, for instance, I, as a middle-aged white male, could not cry hate speech because I don't belong to the exclusive group of people who are so supposedly subject to hate speech. Only certain people in a society can say that they have been a victim of hate speech. But the real victims here are going to be journalists, reporters, and individual Canadians who happen to disagree with this Trudeau government on anything. Because it will be deemed as hateful in one way or the other. And people will be subject to life imprisonment. They can be subject to $50,000, $70,000 fines through human rights tribunals. This creates a digital safety commission, and an online safety czar called a digital safety ombudsperson. So this is a whole layer of government, another layer of bureaucracy that already that's going to affect an already overladen federal bureaucracy. We're going to have more government employees laying down the law, going after people, suggesting people be arrested and prosecuted. And did you know, for instance, that social media companies that violate this law, that allow a post that is deemed to be hateful, can be subject to a 6% monetization penalty from the federal government. If they don't take the material down within 24 hours, they will have to pay a fine up to 6% of their global, not national, but global gross revenue. That could be hundreds of millions of dollars in fines against social media companies. This will mean that companies like Facebook and X will just leave Canada. They will just leave Canada because they will not want this harassment. They will have no time for the legal fees and the annoyance and the potential fees. But the worst part of the Online Harms Act is definitely the hate or the thought crimes component, which a lot of people missed when it first came out. We were so aghast to read life imprisonment. I'm going to life in prison because I said something that somebody thought was hateful. Well, if somebody down my street goes to the Thought Crimes Commission and says, hey, Krayden says a lot of controversial things on his broadcast. I think he's going to say something hateful. I think he's thinking that. I can be prosecuted and put under house arrest with a bracelet on my ankle because I might be thinking something that's potentially hateful. That is just so absurd, but it is right from 1984. And we are living the novel right now in Canada. And we're on the verge of it becoming real in terms of it's the law. And thank God this bill, C-63, did not pass second reading in the current legislative session of Parliament. It got through first reading in March. It did not get to second reading. So I'm more optimistic now in June than I was in April when I said we might be able to keep this bill from being passed before the next election in October 2025. I'm more optimistic that with Parliament out until mid to late September, we won't see a second reading of this possibly till early 2025. And we might not see this bill pass. But it's not because the Liberals want it to lay dormant. Trudeau believes in this bill, and it's not getting the criticism from the official opposition that it needs to get. I've said that to several Tory MPs. I said, you guys need to be up there every day talking about this bill is the worst legislation Trudeau has ever come up with. So, you want to talk about car theft? You want to talk about food banks and soup kitchens? Yeah, that's important. But your freedom of speech is foundational to what freedom is in Canada. I lose my freedom of speech, I'm no longer a free Canadian. I'm no longer living in a democracy. I'm living in a dictatorship. And that to me is what this should all be about for the official opposition. They need to come on strong and attack this bill and say this is a life or death moment for Canada.
Yeah, but it seems like it is very disturbing when I read in the news about that report. It means if you are thinking, as you mentioned, if somebody would watch your show that you are streaming, maybe they think you are going to say it, though you did not say it. But it seems like, is it a protection of diaspora community? Because some people think like it means it means white people are just racist, like non-white people. So it means people like me would use this bill and argue against a white privileged Canadian. So, but don't you think it is a racist when you call somebody, it means a racist? It means it will be a complete attack on each and every individual those does not agree. Maybe somebody criticize government too, like it means if you don't agree with the government, you call it out and they will say, oh, this is a racism, or it means under that bill, online arms.
Oh, it's going to mean judicial chaos if this thing goes through, because that's what's happening in Scotland.
Yeah.
Where they passed a similar bill in Scotland.
Yes.
And in the first week, they had literally thousands of people accusing and counter-accusing each other of hate speech. And so there's more hate crimes now in Scotland than there are thefts and burglaries and murders and rapes. The police are totally focused on hate crime. And this is ludicrous. I mean, just get real, people. This they've already got laws against hate speech and child pornography and revenge porn in Canada. This bill has nothing to do with that. It's about silencing people on the internet. That's all this bill is about. And I'm sick of hearing the justice minister stand up and say, this is about protecting children. It's nonsense. This is about prosecuting people who speak their minds about anything. And it's going, and at the very least, it's going to lead to chaos with people with suits, with legal suits, or people saying he should be arrested, and that person saying no, he should be arrested because he called me this, and it is going to be absolute chaos and disaster if this thing goes through. But the other bills he's pushed through have already created a sense of unease with free speech, and we already have some fingers tied to our wrist, but now he wants to essentially tie our arms behind our back with this Online Harms Act. And
but do you think this government will survive until next election, 2025, or it's time up for Trudeau and his Liberal government?
It all depends on Jagmeet Singh and how long he can tolerate his hypocrisy, how long he can live with himself for propping up a government that he stands up and criticizes every day in question period. How he can live with himself, I have no idea. He is the reason that the government is existing. Jagmeet Singh says Trudeau totally mishandled the spy story. He said he's not shown leadership, yet he continues to prop up this government. So will he be able to do that? I can't predict the future. I think it will. I think he will continue to live, because why not? He's done it up till now. But if you see a collapse in the NDP vote within the next 14 months, that will lead to the NDP cutting the coalition, the de facto coalition ties with the Trudeau government. And that will be the only thing that will bring this government down. If the NDP vote collapses, which it could. And at that point, even Jagmeet Singh will say, okay, we've got to mend our fences and restore whatever we have, because if he loses that base of support, that bottom line of NDP support, then they have to make radical change, and that means moving away from the Liberals. So I'm 70-30. I'm 70% saying, yeah, it's going to survive till October 2025, but there's 30% doubt now and it also depends on whether or not Justin Trudeau can survive. And that is a bigger question. Whether he can survive for the next 15 months as leader of the Liberal Party, that's a 50-50 proposition. And I think it's quite possible he will be forced out. He won't decide on his own.
Yeah.
But he can be forced out by his caucus, by the party bosses, by the cabinet.
Yep.
And that could well happen because his popularity is so deep and entrenched that it's not going to change. And Liberals are not stupid people. They might be corrupt people, but they're not stupid people. And they know that when you reach the point of no return, that you have to make radical change at the top. And that means replacing your leader. And they do it all the time.
Yeah.
They are ruthless. Liberals are ruthless with changing leaders. They threw Jean Chrétien to the wolves when it was time to move Paul Martin in.
Yeah.
And they did it when it was time to move John Turner in. It was over. And they move on with a new leader.
Yeah.
In both of those cases, however, Canadians didn't fall for it. They didn't fall for John Turner. He was in for a very short period, as was Paul Martin. Canadians did not embrace Paul Martin after Jean Chrétien. And Stephen Harper became prime minister. So I don't think, even if they put in, I don't know who, let's say Chrystia Freeland, who wants the job badly, it won't work. Canadians are not going to buy it, and it's time for a change. And Poilievre will be the next prime minister sooner or later.
Okay. So is it true that Jagmeet Singh is just popping up this government for his pension? Is it true, or it's a
Well,
joke?
I don't know. I don't know Jagmeet Singh. I know a lot of people in Parliament, but I don't know Jagmeet Singh, so I can't categorically say that. It would appear that would suggest he doesn't envision a political life after the next election. I don't know if that's the case, but I do know that there's about 25 MPs who want this election moved up a couple of weeks, or so they can get their gold-plated pension. And Jagmeet Singh doesn't have to go all the way to 2025. I think he needs another year before, and then he qualifies for it. But it would appear that that's what he's up to, because it must be difficult to live with yourself when you have to play this two-headed role of I'm pretending to be an opposition leader, but I'm also a de facto member of Trudeau's cabinet, even though he hasn't given me anything in that cabinet. And all I get is being on a first name basis with the prime minister, because he's Justin and Justin calls Jagmeet, and it's like they're the best of buddies. But Singh didn't get anything out of this in terms of any NDP cabinet positions. He's just there to keep the regime going, and it's a great deal for Trudeau. Great deal. I mean, whoever negotiated this did a damn good job for the Liberals. There's no question about it. But I think Jagmeet's there for the pension, but I can't, not knowing him, I don't know.
So will Trudeau decide his fate based on Toronto St. Paul's by-election?
No, that won't do it. No. He will decide his fate when it's over. That won't be enough for a coup, if you will, in quotation marks, to get rid of him. That will be the writing on the wall, shall you say, that it's inevitable that he's gone, he's going, but it's not going to happen as a result of that. And he might actually squeak through in that by-election, but it will be by a very small margin if he does. If he loses, it's going to be a bad black day for the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau, but not enough to push him out yet, I think.
But do you think he will think about this summer break, that should he continue or he should resign and let someone else to lead the party?
Well, his father thought about it in the winter, so Justin might think about it in the summer. He's got lots of time on his hands because he says, he likes to watch superhero movies and he reads a lot of pulp fiction, and he's not a very serious individual at the best of times. So he might think about things. The summer is a good time to think around the campfire, and as long as he doesn't keep doing blackface, he'll be okay.
And are you focusing on Toronto St. Paul's by-elections polls or something like what are you
Well, I've looked at the polls. I was just reading an article with David Krayden, whom I know from my days at Sun News. He used to be the Sun News pollster, and he's been, when he's right, he's really right. When he's wrong, he's really wrong. But I think he's saying the Liberals are maybe 2 or 3 percentage points ahead of the Conservatives, which makes it a toss-up. Because the margin of error is always plus or minus 2 or 3 percentage points. So it's possible the Conservatives could win. And I think if they do, it won't be a seismic shock, but it will be another nail in the coffin for Justin Trudeau. So yeah, the polling is indicating too close to call.
Okay. So do you think a conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre would be much better than Justin Trudeau in terms of playing diaspora community or DEI quota system? Do you think it will be better, or we have the same system, just keeps going changing?
Poilievre has said he wants to roll back the identity politics in this country, and he in his Christmas interview with Rex Murphy, dear departed Rex Murphy, he said, I want to be the mind your own business party and get out. He wants government's nose out of the family, out of my life, out of your life, out of telling people how to talk, how to think. Stop the gender ideology in the schools. Stop letting 12-year-olds have sex changes, changing their pronouns without telling their parents. Get out of this business. Leave the business of raising children to parents, not the state. Stop telling people how they should be judging others on the basis of their ethnicity or the color of their skin. Stop making this a priority. Get back to equality for all. Every Canadian's equal under the law. That's how Poilievre talks. I hope he delivers. And if he doesn't, I'll be the first one in line criticizing him and saying, you promised a different kind of government. You promised us, you said we'd get back to the Canada we remember growing up in, which is not like the Canada of the last 9 years under Justin Trudeau. You say that all the time. You just said it on Wednesday in the House of Commons during question period. Your last question of this session was, when are we, your days are numbered, Justin Trudeau. You changed Canada in the last 9 years for the bad, but it's not going to last forever. It's going to change. And it's going to change when you're no longer Prime Minister. So he seems to be serious about it. I hope he is. I've known Pierre Poilievre for over 20 years. He's not my best friend. I don't have him over for dinner all the time, but I've known him through politics for 20 years. And I think he's sincere about this. And I hope he is. And like I say, if he's not, I will hold him accountable.
Okay. And okay, so is there anything else you would like to say?
No, I think we covered everything here, so that's good.
Yeah, thank you so much, David.
Well, you're welcome, and it's a pleasure. And I rarely ever say no, but I might not be able to do it right away. But if you need to do this again, be happy to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, get in touch and you want to talk again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
You're welcome. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.